The stars beyond Earth's observation window looked peaceful. Admiral Day 1 Park stood in his office aboard Earth Station 1, watching the distant lights flicker in the darkness of space. He had seen many things in his 53 years, but today would bring something new, something that would change everything. A small transport ship approached the station. Inside was Ambassador Ralvek, a being from a species called the Trell. His people were tall and thin, with blue skin that seemed to glow faintly. Ralvek had traveled across the galaxy to reach Earth with one purpose. He needed humanity's help. Day 1 walked to the meeting room with slow, measured steps. His uniform was clean and pressed, medals from the Mars Rebellion catching the light. That had been 20 years ago, when human colonies fought against Earth's control. Day 1 had been on the wrong side of that conflict, following orders to suppress the rebellion. He still carried the guilt. Now, he commanded Earth's defense fleet, sworn to protect all of humanity. The door slid open. Ralvek stood inside, his large eyes studying Day 1 carefully. Behind the ambassador were two guards, their armor designed for combat in the vacuum of space. They looked nervous. "Admiral Park," Ralvek said, his voice carrying a strange musical quality. "Thank you for meeting with me." "Ambassador," Day 1 replied, gesturing to a chair. "Please, sit. We have much to discuss." Ralvek sat, his long fingers folding together. "We have been fighting for 23 of your years against an enemy we call the Devourers. They are unlike anything your species has encountered." Day 1 had heard rumors. Ships that disappeared near the galactic rim. Entire colonies going silent. The Council had kept the details secret, not wanting to cause panic among younger species like humanity. "The Devourers are a hive mind," Ralvek continued. "They consume everything. Planets, ships, people. They break down matter and absorb it, growing stronger with each world they destroy. We have lost hundreds of systems, trillions of lives." The Admiral felt a chill run down his spine. "Why come to Earth? We've only had faster-than-light travel for 40 years. Our fleet is small compared to yours." "Because you are fresh," Ralvek said. "The Council species are old. We have fought wars for millennia, but always with rules. Honor. The Devourers have no honor. They do not negotiate. They only consume. We need new ideas, new tactics. We need humanity." Day 1 stood and walked to the window. Below, he could see Earth, blue and green and beautiful. 200 years ago, humanity had nearly destroyed itself. Climate collapse, nuclear war, famine. They had clawed their way back from the edge of extinction. The scars still showed in the dead zones, the poisoned oceans that were slowly healing. "What exactly are you asking?" he said quietly. "Join the Council. Send your fleets. Help us fight. And if we refuse?" Ralvek's expression was hard to read, but Day 1 thought he saw sadness there. "Then we will continue alone. But I must warn you, Admiral. The Devourers grow stronger every day. Eventually, they will reach human space. Neutrality will not protect you." The meeting ended an hour later. Day 1 promised to bring the request to President Hana Kim and the unified government. Ralvek thanked him and returned to his ship, leaving behind data files that showed the true horror of the war. Cities melting into organic sludge. Ships torn apart by living weapons. Soldiers consumed and rebuilt as devourer creatures. Day 1 watched the files alone in his office, his stomach turning. Then he sent them to Earth. 3 days later, the unified government convened in Geneva. President Hana Kim was a woman of 60, her hair gray, but her eyes sharp and clear. She had led Earth through the Great Reconstruction, rebuilding cities and ecosystems. She was loved by billions. The council chamber was packed. Representatives from every nation, every colony, every major corporation. They all watched as the Devourer footage played on massive screens. When it ended, silence filled the room. Defense Minister Tae Young-jong spoke first. "This is not our fight. We have spent 2 centuries rebuilding. Our population is only 9 billion, spread across 12 worlds. We cannot risk our species. But if the ambassador is right, said Dr. Hyun-Woo Song, Earth's chief science advisor, the devourers will eventually reach us. Perhaps it is better to fight now, while we have allies. The debate raged for hours. Some argued for war, others for continued neutrality. Some suggested offering the council resources, but not soldiers. Finally, President Hana Kim raised her hand. The room fell silent. I have heard your arguments, she said, her voice calm but firm. I have watched the footage. I have read the reports. And I have made my decision. She stood, her eyes sweeping across the chamber. Earth will remain neutral. We will not join this war. Gasps filled the room. Some delegates nodded in agreement. Others looked shocked. We sympathize with the council's plight, Hana continued. We will offer humanitarian aid, medical supplies, food, raw materials, but we will not send our people to die in a war that is not ours. We have sacrificed too much already. The vote was taken. 3/4 of the delegates supported the president's decision. Earth would not fight. Admiral Daewon received the news aboard his station. He felt relief, mixed with dread. Relief that Earth would be safe. For now. Dread that they might be making a terrible mistake. Meanwhile, far across the galaxy, Captain Ji-Won Lee commanded the exploration vessel Horizon Dawn. She was young, only 35, but brilliant. Her crew loved her because she treated them like family, not subordinates. Her pilot, Min Soo Choi, was joking with the xenobiologist, Yuna Kang, when the sensors detected something unusual. An uncharted planet, in an unmapped system. Captain, you should see this, Min Soo said, excitement in his voice. Ji-Won came to the bridge, her eyes widening as she saw the planet. It was beautiful, covered in purple vegetation and vast oceans. Take us closer, she ordered. They spent 3 days studying the planet, cataloging new life forms and mineral deposits. It was exactly the kind of discovery that made exploration worthwhile. Ji-Won filed her report with Earth, recommending the planet for future colonization. She had no way of knowing that her discovery would mean nothing in the coming days. Because far away, beyond the edge of known space, a devourer fleet was retreating from a council attack. They were wounded, starving, desperate. Their hive mind searched for new feeding grounds, and then their sensors detected something. A cluster of human colonies, poorly defended and rich with life. The devourer fleet changed course. They were heading toward Tau Ceti, a colony world where 4 million humans lived in peace. Farmers, teachers, engineers, children, people who had never seen war. Admiral Daewon sat in his quarters, looking at a photo of his daughter, Soo Bin. She was 28, an engineer working on Tau Ceti. She called him every week, telling him about her work building solar collectors. He smiled at her picture, unaware that in 48 hours, everything would change. President Hana Kim was sleeping when the first emergency alerts came through. She ignored them at first, exhausted from weeks of debates and decisions. By morning, the alerts had become a flood, and Earth learned that neutrality was a luxury they could no longer afford. The emergency broadcast reached Earth Station 1 at 0347 hours. Admiral Daewon Park was already awake, reviewing supply reports, when his communications officer burst into his office without knocking. Admiral, Tau Ceti is under attack. Daewon's blood went cold. Soo Bin, his daughter, was there. Show me, he said, his voice steady despite the fear gripping his chest. The main screen flickered to life. What he saw would haunt him forever. Tau Ceti's main city, New Seoul, was burning. But it wasn't normal fire. The buildings were melting, turning into something organic and alive. Streets writhed like living tissue. The devourer ships hung in orbit. Massive biovessels that looked more like tumors than spacecraft. The colony's defense platforms fired desperately, but their weapons barely scratched the enemy hulls. Within minutes, the platforms were consumed, their metal and circuitry absorbed into the devourer mass. Day One watched as evacuation ships tried to flee the surface. Most never made it. Devourer organisms, fast and insect-like, swarmed them in mid-flight. The ships crashed back to the surface, adding their wreckage to the growing horror below. "How many people?" Day One asked quietly. 4 million residents, sir. Maybe 100,000. Made it to evacuation shelters underground. Maybe. The word hung in the air like poison. Day One grabbed his communicator. "Get me President Kim. Now." While he waited, he pulled up the colony roster, searching frantically for his daughter's name. Sue Bin Park. Engineer 2nd class. Solar Collection Division. Her status showed active, but the data was 12 hours old. Anything could have happened since then. President Hana Kim appeared on screen within minutes, her face pale but composed. Behind her, Day One could see her security team rushing around, setting up emergency protocols. "I've seen the feeds, Admiral," she said before he could speak. "How bad?" "The colony is lost, Madam President. The devourers are consuming everything. We have maybe 6 hours before nothing remains." Hana closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, they were hard as steel. "Convene the emergency council." 1 hour. The meeting was held in a secure bunker beneath Geneva. Every major leader on Earth attended via hologram, their faces grim. Defense Minister Tae Young-jong looked sick, his hands shaking as he watched the live feeds from Tau City. The footage was worse now. Cameras mounted on surviving buildings showed devourer organisms hunting civilians. People screamed and ran, but there was nowhere to go. The end. When the creatures caught them, the victims were pulled apart and absorbed into the hive mass within seconds. Children crying for parents who were already gone. Families torn apart. A teacher trying to shield her students before the swarm took them all. President Hana Kim watched it all without flinching. She had to. Someone had to bear witness. "We need to negotiate," Tae-young said desperately. "Offer them something. Uninhabited systems, resources, anything to make them leave our space." Dr. Hyun-woo Song shook his head. "The devourers don't negotiate, Minister. They're a hive mind. They only consume. Anything we offer would just make them stronger." "Then what do you suggest?" Tae-young snapped. "That we fight? Our fleet is designed for system defense, not interstellar war. Then we adapt," Admiral Day One said, his voice cutting through the argument. "We build. We learn. We do whatever it takes." Everyone turned to look at him. Day One's face was pale, but his eyes burned with something fierce and terrible. "My daughter is down there," he said quietly. "Subin. She's 28. She builds solar collectors. She calls me every Sunday to complain about her supervisor and tell me about the gardens she's planting." His voice cracked slightly, but he pushed on. 4 million people like her are dying right now. They didn't ask for this war. They just wanted to live their lives. And we told them they were safe. We promised them peace. The room was silent. "We were wrong," Day One continued. "We thought neutrality would protect us. We thought if we stayed quiet and small, the monsters wouldn't notice us. But they did, and now our people are paying the price." President Hana Kim stood slowly. She walked to the window, overlooking Geneva, the city lights reflecting in her eyes. "For 200 years, she said softly, we have chosen peace. We rebuilt from ashes. We swore never again would we destroy ourselves. We became better. Askin. She turned to face the council. "But peace requires both sides to choose it. The devourers have made their choice. Now, we must make ours." Her voice grew stronger, filling the chamber. "We asked to be left alone. We wanted no part in galactic wars. But they came to our homes. They murdered our children. They burned our worlds. She slammed her hand on the table, making everyone jump. No more. Earth goes to war. Not because we want to. Not because we seek glory or territory. But because evil must be stopped. And if the galaxy's oldest civilizations cannot stop it, then humanity will. The vote was unanimous this time. Within hours, Earth's war machine began to wake. Shipyards that had built generation ships and colony vessels retooled their production lines. Factories that made farming equipment switched to weapons manufacturing. The orbital foundries around Luna went into overdrive, processing asteroid ore into armor plating. Admiral Day 1 barely slept. He coordinated with fleet commanders across human space, pulling together every military vessel available. Destroyers, meant for pirate suppression. Survey ships with mining lasers. Even civilian vessels volunteered, their captains demanding weapons so they could fight. The response from Earth's population was overwhelming. Young people flooded recruitment centers. Engineers offered their expertise. Scientists began working around the clock on new weapons designs. Captain Ji-1 Lee received her recall orders while the Horizon Dawn was still studying the purple planet. She read them twice, unable to believe what she was seeing. "We're being drafted," she told her crew. "Return to Earth Station 1, immediately, for combat refit." Min-Soo Choi looked up from his pilot console, his usual smile gone. "What happened?" Ji-1 showed them the footage from Tau Ceti. Yuna Kang, normally cheerful and talkative, went pale and silent. Min-Soo just stared at the screen, his hands clenching into fists. "How long to Earth?" Ji-1 asked. 6 days at maximum burn," Min-Soo replied. "Make it 5. While Earth mobilized, Dr. Hyun-Woo Song worked in his laboratory, studying samples recovered from the edge of Tau Ceti's system. A automated probe had collected organic matter from a Devourer scout ship before being destroyed. Hyun-Woo examined the samples under every instrument available. He ran genetic analysis, quantum scans, spectral imaging. The Devourer biology was horrifying in its efficiency. Every cell was connected to every other cell through quantum entanglement, creating an instantaneous communication network across vast distances. "It's beautiful," he whispered, then immediately felt disgusted with himself. This beautiful system had consumed millions of lives, but beauty could be exploited. He began writing equations, modeling scenarios. If the quantum entanglement could be disrupted, what would happen? Would the hive mind fragment? Would the individual organisms die or simply become non-sentient? He worked for 36 hours straight before collapsing at his desk. When he woke, he had the beginnings of a weapon that might actually work. Admiral Day 1 visited the Tau Ceti refugee camp on Mars. 300,000 people had escaped in the final evacuation ships. They were the lucky ones. Though they didn't feel lucky. He walked through the rows of temporary shelters, seeing the same expression on every face. He found what he was looking for in Shelter 47. A young woman sat on a cot, staring at nothing. Her clothes were torn and stained. Her hands were wrapped in bandages. "Subin," he said softly. His daughter looked up. For a moment, she didn't recognize him. Then, something broke in her eyes, and she started crying. Daewon held her while she sobbed, feeling his own tears falling. She was alive. She had made it out. But she was broken in ways he couldn't fix. "I tried to save them, Dad," she whispered. "The children from the school next door. I tried to get them to the shelter. But, I know," he said. "I know." Later, when she finally slept, Daewon sat beside her cot and made a promise to himself. To her. To every person who had died at Tau Ceti. The Devourers would pay, not with negotiations or reparations. With extinction. Across the galaxy, Ambassador Ralvek received Earth's message. His hands shook as he read it. "Humanity is entering the war. We will fight on our terms, using our methods. Coordinate with Admiral Park for fleet integration. Earth expects victory. Ralvek felt something he hadn't felt in 20 years of war: hope. The war room at Earth Station 1 was packed with people who had never expected to work together. Military commanders stood beside civilian engineers. Alien advisors from the Galactic Council tried to explain their strategies to humans who kept interrupting with questions that seemed crazy. Admiral Day 1 Park stood at the center, studying a holographic map of the galaxy. Red dots marked Devourer positions. Blue dots showed Council forces. The tiny green cluster representing Earth's fleet looked pathetically small. Ambassador Ralvek pointed to a sector where Council forces were retreating. "We have been fighting a defensive war, trying to hold systems, protect populations. It hasn't worked. The Devourers simply go around our strong points and attack weaker targets, then stop defending," said Commander Bora Shin, a young woman with sharp eyes and oil-stained hands. She was Earth's top weapons engineer, barely 30 years old but already holding 6 patents on experimental systems. Ralvek's translucent skin flickered with colors that indicated confusion. Stop defending? That would leave billions exposed. "No," Bora said, pulling up her own data. "You stop defending empty space and start hunting. Force them to defend themselves for once." She showed them her design. The Quantum Disruptor, a weapon that could theoretically sever the entanglement links between devourer organisms. Dr. Hyun-Woo Song had given her the theory. She had turned it into reality. "It's untested," Hyun-Woo warned. "We've only run simulations." "Then let's test it," Day 1 said. "Where's the nearest devourer fleet?" Ralvek highlighted a system called Kepler 442, a feeding fleet. 20 ships consuming a dead world for raw materials. Council forces avoid them. Too many ships, too well defended. Day 1 smiled grimly. Perfect. The mobilization took 3 weeks. Earth's shipyards worked day and night, building weapons and retrofitting vessels. The Horizon Dawn, Captain G1 Lee's exploration ship, was transformed into a warship bristling with quantum disruptors. G1 barely recognized her own vessel. The graceful lines were now broken by weapon mounts and armor plating. Min-Soo Choi, her pilot, ran his hands over the new controls, learning systems designed for combat rather than exploration. "Feels wrong," he muttered. "Everything about this is wrong," G1 replied. "But it's what we have to do." Yuna Kang, their xenobiologist, had been reassigned to analyze devourer behavior patterns. She spent her days watching footage of attacks, learning how the hive mind operated. At night, she had nightmares about the things she had seen. The training was brutal. Humans had never fought a space war like this. The Mars Rebellion had been small-scale, confined to a few orbital stations and surface bases. This would be different. They practiced maneuvers until crews could execute them in their sleep. They ran simulations where half the fleet was destroyed in minutes. They learned to think not like individuals, but like parts of a larger organism. It was Yuna who noticed the pattern. She burst into Admiral Day 1's office at midnight, her eyes red from exhaustion, but blazing with excitement. "They're predictable," she said, spreading data across his desk. "The Devourers, I mean. They act like animals following instinct, not an intelligent enemy. They always approach from the same angle. They always target the largest energy signatures first. They never retreat, even when they should." Day 1 studied her findings. She was right. The devourer hive mind was intelligent, but it thought in patterns. Patterns could be exploited. "If we present them with false targets," Yuna continued, "make our smallest ships look like battleships and hide our real weapons, they'll commit to the wrong fight before realizing their mistake." "Deception," Day 1 said. "The Council species don't fight that way." "No," Yuna agreed. "They think it's dishonorable. But humans? We've been tricking each other since we lived in caves." The fleet launched on a cold morning in March. 60 ships, most of them small by Council standards, destroyers and frigates, modified colony transports, even some civilian vessels with weapons strapped to their hulls. Ambassador Ralvek watched them go, his expression unreadable. He had seen thousands of fleets launch over the years. This one looked fragile, improvised, desperate. He had no idea how dangerous, desperate humans could be. The journey to Kepler 442 took 9 days at maximum faster than light speed. Captain G1 used the time to drill her crew relentlessly. Min-Su learned to fly combat patterns. Yuna studied every scrap of data about Devourer ships. On the 8th day, G1 found Min-Su in the mess hall, staring at his food without eating. "Nervous?" she asked, sitting across from him. "Terrified," he admitted. "I'm a pilot, Captain. I've never shot at anything except asteroids during mining practice." "None of us have," G1 said quietly. "But we've all seen what happens if we don't try." Min-Su nodded slowly. They sat in silence for a while, finding comfort in shared fear. The fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. Sensors immediately detected the Devourer ships, 20 massive biovessels, each the size of a small city, orbiting a barren world. They were feeding, breaking down the planet's crust, and absorbing the minerals. "Battle stations," Admiral Day 1 ordered from his flagship. "Begin the deception protocol." Human ships activated their false signature generators. Small frigates broadcast energy readings that made them look like dreadnoughts. The real weapons platforms, disguised as cargo haulers, drifted toward the rear of the formation. The Devourer ships detected them immediately. The feeding stopped. 20 biovessels turned as one, their weapons ports opening like hungry mouths. "Here they come," Min-Su whispered aboard the Horizon Dawn. The Devourer fleet charged exactly as Yuna had predicted. They targeted the ships, broadcasting the largest signatures, ignoring the ones that looked harmless. Bioweapons streaked across space, living projectiles that could punch through armor and consume the crew inside. Human ships scattered, their pilots executing evasive maneuvers that looked chaotic but were carefully planned. The Devourers followed, spreading out as they pursued multiple targets. "Now," Day 1 commanded. The disguised weapons platforms dropped their false signatures and fired. Quantum disruptors lanced out, invisible beams that struck Devourer ships across their entire formation. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the Devourer ships began to tear themselves apart. The hive-mind connection broke. Billions of individual organisms suddenly found themselves cut off from the central intelligence. They panicked. Some tried to flee. Others attacked each other. The bioships convulsed, their organic hulls rupturing as internal structures failed. Aboard the Horizon Dawn, Yuna watched in horrified fascination. "It worked," she breathed. "It actually worked. Keep firing," G1 ordered. "Don't give them time to adapt." The battle lasted 17 minutes. When it ended, all 20 Devourer ships were destroyed. Debris drifted through space, already beginning to decay, without the hive mind to sustain it. Human casualties, 0. The Council received the battle data within hours. Ralvek watched the recording 3 times, unable to believe what he was seeing. In 17 minutes, humans had achieved what Council fleets couldn't do in 20 years. They had made the Devourers afraid. The news spread across the galaxy. Species that had been fighting for decades suddenly had hope. If the young humans could win, maybe the war wasn't lost after all. But in the deep dark between stars, the Devourer hive mind was learning. It had lost a feeding fleet, but it had gained something more valuable: information. It knew about humans now, knew about their weapons, knew about their tactics, and it began to adapt. 3 days after Kepler 442, a Devourer scout fleet changed course. Instead of pursuing Council ships, they redirected toward human space. Not to feed, to strike back. They were heading for the research colony on Proxima Centauri. 5,000 humans, mostly scientists and their families, studying alien ecosystems. The colony had minimal defenses, just 2 patrol boats and a handful of defensive satellites. Admiral Day 1 received the warning from Council deep space sensors. The Devourer fleet would reach Proxima in 48 hours. His own fleet was 5 days away. He looked at the tactical display, calculating possibilities. There was no way to get there in time. No way to save them. Unless... He opened a channel to Captain Ji-Won Lee. Captain. How fast can the Horizon Dawn travel if you push the engines past safety limits? Ji-Won didn't hesitate. Fast enough, Admiral. Give me the coordinates. Across the galaxy, President Hana Kim made a decision she would question for the rest of her life. She authorized the evacuation of Proxima Centauri. Every civilian ship in range was ordered to help, but they all knew the truth. Most of the colonists wouldn't make it out in time. The Devourers were learning to think like humans. To strike at the heart. To cause pain. The war was about to get much worse. The Horizon Dawn screamed through space at speeds that made the hull groan and the engines glow red-hot. Captain Ji-Won Lee sat in her command chair, knuckles white as she watched the distance to Proxima Centauri shrink on her display. 43 hours. That's how long they had before the Devourer fleet arrived. The Horizon Dawn would get there with 90 minutes to spare if the engines didn't explode first. Engine temperature critical. Min Soo Choi reported from the pilot station. Sweat dripped down his face despite the climate control. We're burning through coolant, faster than the recyclers can process it. Keep pushing, G1 ordered. If we slow down, 5,000 people die. In the engineering section, Yuna Kang worked alongside the ship's mechanics, bypassing safety systems and rerouting power. She wasn't trained for this, but desperation made everyone learn fast. Captain, she called over the intercom. If we maintain this speed for another 30 hours, the engines will melt down. We'll be dead in space. Then we'll have 10 hours to make a difference, G1 replied. That'll have to be enough. On Proxima Centauri, the evacuation was chaos. 5,000 colonists, and only enough transport capacity for half that number. Director Kwan Ho Nam tried to maintain order, but people were terrified. Families fought for spaces on ships. Some scientists refused to leave their research. Decades of work they couldn't bear to abandon. Others packed everything they could carry, desperate to save some piece of their lives. Kwan Ho stood on the landing pad, directing traffic and making impossible choices. Children and elderly first. Then, families. Single adults last. He knew that meant he would be among those left behind. His assistant, a young woman named Eun-ji, grabbed his arm. Director, you need to get on the next ship. You're essential personnel. So is everyone else, he replied. Keep loading. President Hana Kim addressed both Earth and the entire Galactic Council simultaneously. The speech was broadcast across thousands of worlds, translated into hundreds of languages. She stood in the unified government chamber, her expression grave but determined. We didn't want this war. She began. Humanity asked only to be left alone, to rebuild in peace. But the Devourers have taken that choice from us. She paused, letting her words sink in. Tau Ceti burned. 4 million of our people died. We mobilized. We fought back. We won a victory. And now the enemy comes for us again, targeting a colony of scientists and children who never raised a weapon against anyone. Her voice grew stronger. Some have asked why we should continue fighting. Why not retreat behind our borders and defend only what we can hold? Why risk more lives for a war the Council couldn't win in 20 years? She leaned forward, staring directly into the camera. Because we've seen what happens when good people do nothing. We've seen what happens when evil is allowed to grow unchecked. 200 years ago, we nearly destroyed ourselves through selfishness and fear. Hana stood straight, her hands clasped behind her back. That oath extends beyond Earth now. We won't watch another species suffer what we suffered. Not when we have the power to stop it. Humanity joins this war not for territory or glory, but because someone must stand against the darkness. The broadcast ended. Within hours, Council species began responding. Some sent messages of gratitude. Others sent ships to join Earth's fleets. The tide was beginning to turn, but at Proxima Centauri, time was running out. The last transport lifted off with Director Quan Ho still on the ground. 2,000 colonists remained, gathered in the research center's main hall. They had weapons, mostly industrial tools converted for defense. Mining lasers. Explosive charges meant for excavation. One old military rifle from someone's personal collection. Quan Ho stood before them. These people he had led for 5 years. "The Horizon Dawn is coming," he said. "Captain Lee will buy us time. We need to survive long enough for the main fleet to arrive." "How long is that?" someone asked. 4 days. The silence was heavy. Everyone knew what that meant. Even if Captain Lee somehow stopped the Devourer fleet, the main force was too far away. They were on their own. "Then we make them earn it," said an elderly scientist named Dr. Il-sung. "I didn't survive the Great Collapse. Just to get eaten by space bugs." People laughed despite their fear. It was the laugh of those who had nothing left to lose. The Horizon Dawn dropped out of faster-than-light travel 92 minutes before the Devourers arrived. The engines were so damaged that they would never travel at light speed again. But they had made it. G1 immediately began deploying the ship's quantum disruptors in orbit around the planet. They had only 4 of the weapons. Against a fleet of 8 Devourer ships, it wouldn't be enough. "Proxima Ground Control, this is Captain Lee. We're here." Quan Ho's voice came back, filled with relief. "Captain." "Still working on that," G1 admitted. "How many people do you have down there?" "How many people do you have down there?" 2,000. "We can hold the research center for maybe a few hours if they breach the orbital defense." G1 looked at her tactical display. 4 quantum disruptors, 8 enemy ships, 2,000 civilians depending on her. "Yuna," she called. "Can we overload the disruptors? Make them more powerful?" Yuna ran calculations on her screen. "Yes, but they'll only get 1 shot before burning out. And if we overload them too much, they might explode." "How big an explosion?" "Big enough to take out anything nearby." G1 felt an idea forming. A terrible, desperate idea. "Minsu, can you fly this ship with damaged engines?" "Barely," the pilot replied. "Mines," G1 said. "We turn the disruptors into mines. Let the Devourers come to us, then detonate them when they're close." It was risky. The disruptors were their only advantage. If the mines didn't work, they would have nothing left to fight with. "Do it," G1 ordered. The Devourer fleet arrived exactly on schedule. 8 bioships, each massive and hungry. They moved in formation. Having learned from the battle at Kepler 442, they wouldn't spread out this time. They would stay together, making it harder to isolate and destroy them. The quantum disruptor mines drifted in orbit, powered down to avoid detection. On the surface, 2,000 colonists watched the skies and prayed. The Devourer ships opened fire on the defensive satellites first. The small, automated weapons platforms stood no chance. They were consumed within minutes. Their metal converted into more Devourer biomass. Then the bioships began their descent toward the planet. "Wait for it," G1 whispered, watching her tactical display. The Devourers were passing the mines, not detecting them. Closer, closer. Now, the mines detonated. 4 quantum disruptors, overloaded to maximum output, erupted in silent fury. The invisible beams tore through Devourer hulls, severing hive mind connections across millions of organisms. 3 of the 8 ships were destroyed instantly. 2 more were crippled, their coordination broken. But 3 ships remained functional, having been just outside the blast radius, and they were very, very angry. The 3 surviving Devourer ships adjusted their course, heading directly for the Horizon Dawn. Bioweapons launched, living projectiles that could eat through armor like acid. "Evasive action," G1 shouted. Minsu threw the ship into a desperate roll, but the damaged engines couldn't respond fast enough. A bioweapon struck their port side, punching through the hull. Alarms screamed. Atmosphere vented into space. "Seal that section," G1 ordered. The crew worked frantically, closing bulkheads and rerouting life support. But more bioweapons were coming. On the surface, Director Quan Ho watched the battle through the research center's telescopes. He saw the horizon dawn, taking hit after hit. Saw it struggling to stay in orbit. "They're going to die up there," someone said. "Not yet, they're not," Quan Ho replied. He opened the colony's communication array to maximum power. "All ships in range. This is Proxima Centauri. We need immediate assistance. Any ship, civilian or military, please respond." The call went out across dozens of light years, and someone answered. "Proxima Centauri, this is the freighter Golden Star. We're 12 hours out, but we're coming." "Hold on." Then another voice. "This is the survey ship, Morning Light. 8 hours away. Coming. At maximum. Burn." More ships responded. Cargo haulers. Colony transports. A luxury yacht, whose owner had converted it into a weapons platform. They were scattered across human space, but they were all turning toward Proxima Centauri. Aboard the Horizon Dawn, things were getting worse. Another bioweapon hit had destroyed their main reactor. They were running on reserves, which meant the weapon systems were offline. "Captain, we're dead in space," Minsu reported. Ji-won looked at her crew. Yuna, brilliant and terrified. Minsu, brave, despite his fear. The 24 other people who had trusted her to lead them. She thought about the 2,000 colonists below. About the ships racing to help. About Admiral Dae-won and President Hana Kim, and everyone who was counting on humanity to win. "Abandon ship," she ordered. "What?" Yuna stared at her. "Captain, where would we go?" "The escape pods. Get to the surface. Help the colonists fortify their position." "And you?" Minsu asked, though he already knew the answer. "I'm staying here." "The Devourers want this ship? They can have it. Along with every explosive we have left in the armory." Understanding dawned on their faces. The Horizon Dawn would become a bomb. "I'm staying too," Minsu said immediately. "Minsu, you need a pilot to ram this thing into them properly." "I'm staying." Yuna stepped forward. "And someone needs to wire the explosives." "I'm staying." Ji-won wanted to order them to leave, but she saw the determination in their eyes. They had made their choice. Everyone else. 22 crew members fled to the escape pods, leaving only Captain Ji-won Lee, pilot Minsu Choi, and xenobiologist Yuna Kang aboard the dying ship. The 3 Devourer vessels approached, confident in their victory. They had no idea what humans were willing to sacrifice. Yuna Kang worked in the Horizon Dawn's armory with shaking hands. Every explosive device on the ship was being wired together into one massive bomb. Fusion cores, mining charges, missile warheads, even the ship's self-destruct system. All of it connected to a single trigger. "How much time do we have?" she asked over the intercom. Captain Ji-won checked her sensors. 3 minutes until the Devourers are in range." "How's it going?" "Almost done." This is either going to be the biggest explosion in human history or the biggest failure. Maybe both. In the cockpit, Minsu Choi nursed the dying engines, coaxing one last surge of power from systems that were already falling apart. The Horizon Dawn drifted, looking like a helpless wreck, exactly what they wanted the Devourers to think. "Yuna, status?" Ji-won called. "Ready. Just say the word." Ji-won looked at the tactical display one last time. The 3 Devourer ships were closing in, preparing to board and consume the disabled vessel. Behind them, in the distance, she could see the first of the rescue ships approaching. The freighter Golden Star was burning hard, trying to reach Proxima Centauri before the battle ended. They would be too late. But maybe, just maybe, they would arrive in time to help the survivors on the surface. Minsu, give me everything the engines have left. One last run. The pilot's hands moved across the controls, pointing us straight at the biggest devourer ship. On your mark, Captain. G1 took a deep breath. She thought about her crew, safe in the escape pods heading for the surface. She thought about the 2,000 colonists depending on her. She thought about Earth and her family, and everyone she would never see again. It's been an honor serving with you both, she said quietly. Likewise, Captain, Yuna replied. Let's show these things why you don't mess with humans, Minsu added. G1 smiled. Mark. The Horizon Dawn's engines roared to life one final time. The ship lurched forward, accelerating straight at the lead devourer vessel. The bioship tried to evade, but it was too close and too slow. The Horizon Dawn struck the devourer ship at full speed. Yuna triggered the explosives. The explosion could be seen from the surface of Proxima Centauri. A brief star bloomed in orbit, white and terrible and beautiful. When it faded, all 3 devourer ships were gone, torn apart by the blast. Director Quan Ho watched from the research center, his face wet with tears. Around him, 2,000 colonists stood in silence, honoring 3 people they had never met who had just saved their lives. Clear the landing pads, Quan Ho said softly. Rescue ships are incoming. And prepare medical facilities. We have escape pods to recover. The Golden Star and the other rescue vessels arrived 6 hours later. They found the escape pods scattered across Proxima Centauri's surface, all crew members safe, but of Captain Ji-Won Lee, pilot Min-Soo Choi, and xenobiologist Yuna Kang, there was no trace. Just debris in orbit and a planet full of grateful survivors. The news of their sacrifice spread across human space within hours. Then, across the galaxy, the story of 3 humans who chose to die so thousands could live became something more than news. It became legend. President Hana Kim gave the eulogy at a memorial service that was broadcast to every human world. She stood before images of the 3 heroes, her voice steady, but her eyes red. They were explorers, she said. Ji-Won wanted to map the unknown. Min-Soo dreamed of flying faster than light. Yuna studied alien life because she believed understanding brought peace. She paused, looking at the gathered crowd. They never wanted to be warriors. But when war came to innocent people, they didn't hesitate. They gave everything so others might live. That is the best of humanity. That is what we fight for. The service ended with 21 guns firing into the sky. A tradition older than spaceflight. Each shot echoed across the memorial ground. A farewell to heroes who would never come home. But the war didn't stop for grief. Admiral Day 1 Park received word that the Devourers were changing tactics. Instead of feeding fleets operating independently, they were gathering their forces, building towards something big. They're planning a major offensive, Ralvek warned during a strategy session. Our intelligence suggests they're targeting the Council's capital world, Vex Prime. If it falls, the Council collapses. Day 1 studied the tactical projections. 300 Devourer bioships, the largest fleet ever assembled, were converging on Vex Prime. The Council was gathering every vessel they could muster, but it wouldn't be enough. How many people on Vex Prime? He asked. 40 billion, Ralvek replied. It's the most populated world in Council space. 40 billion lives. The number was incomprehensible. We need to help them, Dr. Hyun Woo Song said. If Vex Prime falls, the Devourers will be unstoppable. Defense Minister Tae Young-jong shook his head. Our fleet is still rebuilding. We lost one of our best ships at Proxima. We're not ready for a battle of this scale. We'll never be ready, Day 1 replied. But we go anyway. Because that's what G1 and her crew taught us. You don't wait for perfect conditions. You fight when fighting matters. President Hana Kim made the decision. Earth would send its entire fleet to defend Vex Prime. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier. They would stand with the Council against the largest Devourer assault in history. The human fleet that assembled was larger than anything Earth had ever produced. 120 ships, ranging from massive battleships to small frigates. They carried 50,000 crew members, all volunteers, all willing to die, to protect a world they had never seen. Among them was a new ship, commissioned in record time. The G-1 Lee, a destroyer carrying the most advanced quantum disruptors ever built. Her captain was young and untested, but she carried the name with pride. Also in the fleet was a small medical transport. Aboard it was Subin Park, Admiral Daewon's daughter. She had recovered enough from Tau Ceti to insist on serving. Not as a soldier, but as a trauma counselor, helping other survivors cope with their experiences. Daewon tried to order her to stay on Earth. She refused. "You're going," she said simply. "I'm going. We do this together." The combined human and council fleet gathered at Vex Prime 3 days before the Devourers arrived. It was the largest military force ever assembled, 5,000 ships from 47 species, all united against a common enemy. But intelligence reports showed the Devourer fleet was even larger. 300 bioships, each carrying millions of organisms. The math was brutal. Even with every advantage, the Council would likely lose. Daewon stood on his flagship's bridge, looking at the tactical display. He was planning the impossible. A way to win, when winning seemed beyond reach. Dr. Hyunwoo contacted him from the research vessel in the fleet. "Admiral, I think I've found something. The Devourer hive mind has a core, a central node that coordinates all the others." "Where?" Daewon asked. "According to our scans, it's aboard one of their bioships. The largest one. If we could destroy that node, the entire Devourer network might collapse. Might. I'm 60% certain. Maybe 70. It's the best we have." Daewon made his decision. "Then that's our target. We focus everything on destroying the core node." The Devourer fleet arrived on schedule. 300 bioships dropping out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. They immediately began their assault on Vex Prime's orbital defenses. The battle that followed would be remembered for millennia. Council ships fought with honor and courage, holding defensive positions against overwhelming odds. Human ships darted through the chaos, using guerrilla tactics and deception to strike where the Devourers least expected. The G-1 Lee led a squadron deep into enemy formation, her quantum disruptors tearing through bioships. Her young captain, Ji-Hae Nam, fought with a fury that honored her ship's namesake. But it wasn't enough. The Devourers kept coming, wave after wave. Ships on both sides were destroyed. Thousands died in minutes. Tens of thousands. Admiral Daewon watched the battle from his flagship, searching for the core node. Finally, sensors detected it. The largest bioship, hanging back from the main battle, coordinating the assault. "All ships," he broadcast, "target the command vessel. Everything we have." The human fleet turned as one, driving toward the core node. Council ships followed, sensing the change in strategy. The Devourers responded, diverting ships to protect their central intelligence. The fighting became desperate. Ships rammed each other. Crews boarded enemy vessels in hand-to-hand combat. The space around Vex Prime became a graveyard. And still the core node survived, protected by layers of Devourer ships. Dr. Hyunwoo contacted Daewon again. "Admiral, we're not going to reach it. They're protecting it too well." Daewon looked at his tactical display. Hyunwoo was right. They needed something more. Something that could punch through the Devourer defenses and reach the core. His eyes fell on his own ship. The flagship carried a prototype weapon, an enhanced quantum disruptor, powerful enough to destroy an entire bioship. But using it required getting close. Suicide close. "I need to speak to my daughter," Daewon said quietly. The call was short. Subin appeared on screen, her face showing she already knew what he was about to say. I'm sorry, Day One said. I promised I would come home. I know, Subin replied. And I'm proud of you. Do what you have to do, Dad. Take care of yourself. Live the life I couldn't give you. 2. I will. I love you. I love you too. The connection ended. Admiral Day One Park stood, straightening his uniform one last time. He opened a channel to the entire fleet. This is Admiral Park. I'm taking my ship on a final run at the core node. All other vessels, prepare to fire quantum disruptors the moment my attack creates an opening. It's been an honor serving with all of you. Now let's end this war. His flagship accelerated toward the Devourer command vessel, weapons firing continuously. Bioships tried to intercept, but Day One's ship was too fast, too determined. He reached the core node. In his final moment, Admiral Day One Park smiled. For Tau Ceti, for G1, for Earth, he fired the enhanced quantum disruptor at point-blank range. The core node exploded. The quantum pulse rippled outward at the speed of light, severing connections across the entire Devourer network. Every bioship, in every system, across the entire galaxy, went dark. The Devourer hive mind ceased to exist. Silence fell across the battlefield. Devourer organisms became mindless, their coordination gone. They drifted in space, no longer dangerous. Just biological matter, waiting to decay. The war was over. Humanity had won. But the price had been terrible. On Earth, President Hana Kim stood before the unified government, announcing victory to a weeping world. 15,000 humans had died in the war. Admiral Day One Park, Captain Ji-Won Lee, Pilot Min-Soo Choi, Xenobiologist Yuna Kang, thousands of others whose names would be remembered forever. The Galactic Council offered Earth full membership, permanent seats on every major committee, access to all Council technology and resources. Hana accepted, but with conditions. We join not as conquerors, but as partners. Not to gain power, but to prevent another war like this. We will share our knowledge freely. We will help rebuild what was destroyed, and we will make sure no species ever faces genocide alone again. The galaxy agreed. In the years that followed, Earth became a leader in the Council, not through military might, but through innovation and compassion. Dr. Hyun-Woo Song led research into preventing another hive mind species from emerging. Engineer Bo-Ra Shin's quantum technology became the foundation for new defensive systems. Tau Ceti was rebuilt, more beautiful than before. A memorial was erected at the center of New Seoul, listing every name of those who died. At its heart stood a statue of the Horizon Dawn, its hull scarred, but proud. The inscription read, "They refused the call to war, until war called on the innocent. Then, they gave everything. One, they, one. Subin Park became the memorial's chief architect. She spent her life designing monuments to those who had fallen, making sure their sacrifices would never be forgotten. 10 years after the war ended, a new ship was commissioned. The Day One Park, a massive explorer vessel designed not for war, but for discovery. Its maiden voyage was to map uncharted systems, searching for new life and new worlds. The ship's dedication ceremony was attended by thousands, including Ambassador Ralvek, now retired but still honored. Subin stood at the podium, her hair showing gray, but her eyes still bright. "My father believed in protecting the innocent," she said. Captain Lee believed in exploring the unknown. Min-Soo believed in pushing boundaries. Yuna believed in understanding, not fearing. What was different? She looked up at the massive ship. This vessel honors them all. It carries weapons, because we learned that peace requires strength. But its primary mission is exploration and understanding, because that's what they would have wanted. The Day One park launched to cheers and tears, beginning humanity's next chapter among the stars. And across the galaxy, on worlds that had been saved by human courage, children were taught the story. The story of how Earth refused to join the war, until the aliens picked the wrong enemy. The story of how humanity learned that sometimes the price of peace is war, and how the price of survival is sacrifice. But most importantly, they learned that when humans make a promise to protect the innocent, they keep it, no matter the cost.